How's it going, everybody? Talking about motivation, Motivation Monday, how to find it. That's one of the topics that we're going to focus on in terms of Motivation Monday. Wanted to chime in for a quick second with you all and just have a talk about motivation and kind of like what that means and how to find it if you don't feel like you have motivation, or sometimes you lack it, or sometimes you feel like it dissipates, and it just deplenishes over time. Motivation is really, I heard a while back, a long time ago, I was listening to something, and there was a comment made that most successful people, people that are well off, well to do in life, especially by societal standards, they don't need to find motivation. They already have it, right? It's more about discipline and consistency. So, in terms of discipline and consistency, that's more so a maintenance for the motivation that they have, right? So, it's not something that they need to look for because they have that hunger, they have that grind, they have that drive to be able to get to wherever it is that they want to get to in life. And so that brings me to the next point. When we're talking in terms of motivation, we don't necessarily have to always look for it. Sometimes it's there. We just have to unearth it, uncover it, right? And then there brings about consistency. So when we do have that motivation, right, how to keep it going, how to have that motivation sustained over time, especially when we're talking years to come. Maybe there are some failures and some circumstances that have led to you not being exactly where you want to, especially when we're giving ourselves time frames in life. So that's when I notice a lot of times with people that I work with, we see that motivation or that consistency, that drive starts to deplenish over time. So then they lose their motivation to continue going, right? Because they feel like nothing is paying off. And this is why, when we're talking in terms of a life plan, I recommend having a life plan, right? Main title, and writing these things down is really, really important to have a life plan, and then give yourself short-term goals, right? Something that's measurable, something that you can see it happening over time. There's a way to gauge that progress, right? Because it gives you some sense of comfort in knowing that you are in fact making progress. And then the other piece is that we're talking about objective, right? Having something that is consistent, is measurable, is that you can look at this and it's tangible, right? It has a given outcome in the long run, right? So you can see this thing progress over time, and then you have some way of looking at that and knowing that you've now achieved that, right? And then make sure it's attainable. Make sure it's something that's not far out of your reach. Make sure it's realistic. Make sure that it's something that you can, in fact, do with the given and said circumstances that you may be in. So you're trying to work your way out of something. You have to give yourself little inches, right, in order to gain that mile. And so don't go for the mile. Don't go for the gusto. Don't go so far fetched that you can't see any progress, and then that deplenishes your motivation, right? And then obviously that then dissipates the consistent effort that you may be willing to put in due to the lack of having said outcomes. So that's really, really important. So I really just wanted to touch on those particular topics. So we got life plan, right? We got short-term goals, making sure that those things are measurable, making sure that they're objective, making sure that they're attainable and realistic. And then moving on, we want to figure out, like, where do we want the train to stop, right? Where do we want this thing to end up? Like, what are we working overall for, right, in life? What is my life legacy, or what is it that I'm trying to overall accomplish in life, right? What am I doing this for? And this is where it's going to get big. So we've got life plan, we've got short-term goals, we got to make sure that they're attainable, measurable, objective, specific. I also want to add that in too. Make sure they're specific, which kind of plays into that objectivity component. But yeah, make sure they're specific and measurable, and realistic. So then we've got long-term outcome, right? Not long-term goals, long-term outcome. So I like to switch that up a little bit. I don't do the typical like short-term, long-term goals. You have short-term goals, right? Because these are things that are steps. They're trying to get you to the overall outcome, right? So then I have long-term outcome. That's how I term it. Long-term outcome. What am I doing this for, right? So now let's take that a step further. When we're talking long-term outcome, I mean, we're talking things years out. We're talking, where do I want my life to end up? Where do I want my children to end up? Like, I mean, that far out, right? When I am dead and gone, right? I mean, this far out, right? With this level of, specific navigation through your life. So yeah, we have to really think about that and take those things into consideration when we're talking about long-term outcome, right? And that's why I use that word outcome. A long-term outcome is because this is, again, where we want the train to stop. Like the buck stops here. So if we're doing all these things, all these short-term goals, all these measurable goals, all these attainable goals, all these realistic and objective goals, right, specific to our long-term outcome. And that's why I added the specific component to that, because it's specific to our long-term outcome. So they have to eventually line up with that. So you have to do all these things in the beginning, because if your short-term goals aren't lining up with your long-term outcome, which may change over time in terms of the short-term methodology, right? There may be a different path that you may take or navigate that long-term outcome overall, but the long-term outcome remains the same, right? So when we're thinking about that, one of the things that you have to ask yourself is, what am I doing this for, right? What am I doing this for? So if we're talking anything in life, maybe it's you're working what feels to be a dead end job, right? So what's the long-term outcome, right? How is this seemingly, right, dead end job getting me to my long-term outcome? So that's where you find the motivation. So you've got to ask yourself questions like that, because if you don't ask those types of questions, then you lose focus, thus losing motivation and the consistency to gain progress, right? So there is no progression towards that goal because you've lost focus, thus losing motivation to continue working because you've lost track of the long-term outcome, right? The specific components, right? The specific methodology and your short-term goals, they get you to your long-term outcome, right? They get you to your long-term outcome. What am I doing this for? This is how you come up with your long-term outcome. Who am I doing this for, right? Two very, very important questions you have to ask yourself. What am I doing this for? Who am I doing this for? You may be included in that. You may be at the bottom of the list in that. I'm not sure, right? It doesn't really matter, but you've got to answer those questions, right? You got to answer those questions for yourself. You got to think about those things. You got to think about, what am I doing this for? Who am I doing this for? So that those short-term goals line up, right? And this gives you motivation. So whenever you get in a tough time, whenever you feel like that dead end job is pointless, whenever you feel like there is no progress, right? You remember the answer to those two questions. This is important in keeping motivation, right? Keeping motivation consistent throughout the time, right? This is vital to keeping motivation consistent. You got to ask yourself those two questions. You got to remember your reasons, right? Your reasons. What is my reason for doing this? What is my reason for working so hard? See, because those things have to be so important, so vital, so specific, right? That any pain that you may go through, any hardship that you may endure, right? It is all worth it. For some people, that's children. For some people, that's legacy, which would include children most times, right? Some people, that's family, right? So that may be the existential family, right? The overall family. Sometimes it may be immediate family. It may be wife, kids, or partner and kids, right? It may be, whomever or whatever, right? It may be to leave a home, whatever it may be. You got to ask yourself those things in order to keep the motivation, right? And to keep the consistency. So you got your life plan, right? life plan, you got short-term goals, right? You develop those short-term goals. You're making sure that they're attainable, right? So that you don't lose hope, right? You're making sure that they're measurable so that you can see and track the progress, right? You're making sure they're specific, right? And objective so that you know what it is that you're working towards, right? You have specific ways to see the progress and measure the outcomes on those goals, right? Right? So we're making sure all of these things are in line, right? And they're realistic. They're realistic. There's something that can, in fact, be attained. And this is where honesty and insight is vital. This is where honesty and insight is vital. So you got to be honest with yourself as to whether or not these things are realistic, right? To be attained in this short term, right? And when I say short term, I'm talking 3 to 6 months. That's a typical time frame for a short term goal, right? 3 to 6 months. What is it that I will be doing, right, towards, and then we're jumping back towards my long-term outcome. So we got life plans, we got short-term goals, we got all of those pointers that I just laid out, and then we've got long-term outcome, right? Where do I want the train to stop, right? What am I doing this for? Who am I doing this for? And when you answer those two questions, then you can develop your long-term outcome. What is it that I hope to have at the end of this all? What is it I hope to have established at the end of this all? What am I doing this for? Who am I doing this for, right? What is my reason, right? What is my reason? That is what continues the consistency and the motivation. That is what continues that grind. That's what continues that effort. Like I said, no matter what hardships you may endure, no matter what troubles may happen, no matter if you might slip and fall, right? No matter if it's seemingly pointless, you ask yourself those two questions. What am I doing this for? Who am I doing this for? Right? You develop those reasonings. You develop those reasons, that rationale in your mind, your mentality will shift to a point and kicking into overdrive. And I guarantee you your behaviors and your actions will continue to align back with that long-term outcome. So you're reshifting your focus. You have to keep your focus aligned with your long-term outcome. If you lose focus of your long-term outcome, your short goals really, they fail to exist in that point, because that is something that you cannot see quite evidently. But if you remember, right, what you're working towards, if you remember why you're working towards it, then that keeps the motivation going. That keeps the consistency. And just like anything else, this is something that can be strengthened over time. I'm a very determined individual. I'm a very focused individual. I'm a very self-driven and motivated individual. And I do believe that there is some truth to that saying that I was telling you early on in the video, that oftentimes the most successful people don't need motivation. They need consistency and discipline, right? So it's consistency and discipline would stand on that path, right? So maybe that's you. Maybe you don't necessarily have the issue with motivation, but the issue with consistency and discipline, right? To stay on course, to stay on purpose, to stay on that path, to continue to develop yourself, to continue working on those short-term goals so that you then achieve the long-term outcome, not allowing people, things, situations, circumstances to knock you off course, right? That's a part of motivation. That's a part of the consistency that I was talking about. And so when we jump to Focus Friday, see, and I talk about like staying on purpose, and I talk about staying focused, this is a part of why, right? This is a part of the how. This is how we do these things. And this could carry over into relationships as well, because see, we have motivators, right? We have motivators, and motivators, right, could sometimes be the what you want your family to look like, right? What you want your life or your home or your circumstances, your finances to look like, right? So all of these things play a huge role, right? In terms of motivation, consistency, effort, focus, right? So if you got somebody that's knocking you off of focus towards your long-term outcome, you got to move that person out of the picture, right? Right? And it's not to say that they're 100% to blame, because you are too, because you are allowing that. No one can knock you off purpose unless you allow them to. No one can knock you off purpose unless you allow them to. Let me say that again. No one can knock you off purpose unless you allow them to, right? Get back on focus, get back on track. Keep a mentality of discipline. Keep a mentality of focus. Right? Hard work, dedication, efficacy. efficiency towards that long-term outcome. Your long-term outcome. So write these things down. It's super important that you write these things down because you don't want to get in the habit of saying, I'll remember that. Write these things down. Make it tangible. That's one of the things that helps with making it realistic. That's one of the things that helps with making it measurable, right? You're tracking the progress. That's one of the things that helps with the objectivity. You can check these things out, right? Over that 3 to 6 month period, you can check those things off of the list. You can take them out and then you can add new ones. If you achieve one of those things in a shorter time frame than expected, not only is that a motivator, remember I said we got motivators, that's a motivator, right? And then you throw another one in there. Don't get complacent. Stay on focus. Keep that mentality of progress, motivation, discipline, consistency. It's super important. It's vital to your progress. It's vital to your success. So stay on track. Don't allow anyone to knock you off purpose. Don't get in your own way. Don't talk negative self-talk, defeating talk, right? Don't say, I'll never do this. Oh, it's going to be so hard to do this. Yeah, it is going to be hard. We don't need to talk about that. How are we going to make it easier? How are we going to make it less difficult? We don't need to focus on the problems. What we focus on grows. So we're going to focus on solutions. I don't want you to focus on the problems. I want you to focus on the how am I going to overcome this? How am I going to get towards that long-term outcome, inch by inch, step by step, right? Centimeter by centimeter if necessary. At least I am making progress. See, there's a difference when you shift your mentality towards one of positivity. You don't focus on how little you've gained. You focus on the fact that you have, in fact, gained. See, because we can look at that. Oh, man, I didn't go very far, but I went. See, there's a huge shifting, right, a perspective when you change your focus, when you change your mentality, and when you get motivated and you stay consistent in that motivation. When you stay consistent, right, you don't allow things to knock you off course. Nothing can get in your way. In fact, you run those things over or you move them aside. I am one, right? I am one that I say, keep going. Don't even take the time to move things away. Don't even take that time. Leave it going. Leave it. You just keep going. You just keep going. You don't stop, right? Those who are willing to run the race with you, support you, cheer you on, they will be there. They will be there in the stands. They will run the race with you, right? They'll pick you up if you trip. They won't knock you down. They won't tell you to look over here while you're running the race, right? They'll keep you focused. They'll keep you motivated because they know that you're willing to pour that same type of energy into them, that same type of effort into them, right? That's what partnership is, right? That's what camaraderie is. Iron sharpening iron, right? Building your circle so that it increases in value, not size, not size. Let me say that again. Build your circle so that it increases in value, not size. Let me say that again, because that's super important. Build your circle so that it increases in value, not size. See, oftentimes we find that people want to have so many people around them, right? And they think that a village necessarily means quantity. No, quality, right? Quality is essential to growth. Accountability, honesty is essential to growth. Have people around you that are willing to be honest with you despite making you upset. Because eventually the hope is that you will grow, that you don't become upset to the feedback, that you'll be able to appreciate the feedback, that you'll be able to appreciate the love that they're giving you through their honesty, through their insight, through their accountability, so that you can probably do that yourself. So that when they say that, your initial reaction isn't, who are you to tell me this, instead of thank you for telling me that. right? Thank you for telling me that. Increase in value, not size. Surround yourself with people that are smarter than you. Surround yourself with people that are accountable to you and that encourage accountability with them. Honesty. Every time if somebody's telling you what you want to hear all the time, if that's the majority of their feedback, even, I challenge you. I challenge you to question that relationship. I challenge you to have an honest conversation in that relationship. If the majority of the feedback that they're giving you, you agree with, something is wrong. Something is off. Because no one is perfect. We aren't always doing things right. Right? So if that person or those people, right, aren't sometimes calling you out on some things about your character, right? About your tone, about your interactions, your behavior, your mentality, your thinking, your judgment. I could go on. If people aren't calling you out about some of these things, you need to find a new circle. You need to find a new person. Yes, men aren't good for growth, right? Yes, men aren't good for growth. I say that again. Yes, men are not good for growth, right? We're talking about motivation. We're talking about growth. We're talking about sustainability in said growth, right? Consistency. If you want to grow, you have to challenge yourself, right? You have to push the limits. You have to push the bounds. You cannot allow these things to hold you back. You cannot allow yourself to hold you back due to being comfortable where you are, complacent, stagnant. If you aren't uncomfortable, you aren't growing. Where do you think the phrase growing pains come from, right? It's fact. It's fact. It really happens. You have to be a little uncomfortable to grow. So if people are challenging you, pushing you, making you uncomfortable, right? If you aren't going through painful situations and circumstances, how could you ever appreciate the growth at the end? How could you ever appreciate your long-term outcome, right? How could you ever even get there without challenging yourself, without growing, without being uncomfortable, without trekking through some difficult circumstances and situations, dealing with some difficult people, having some difficult experiences, right? How could you ever get there? Don't get in your own way for being too comfortable where you are. If you feel like you're doing your best now, no matter where you may be in life, you may be a multimillionaire. If you feel like you're doing your best right now, I guarantee you, you're sadly mistaken. And that is a very, very sorrowful place to be in. We can always be better. We can always do better. We can always think better. We can always learn more. So if you think you are at your best, you're worse off than you ever could have imagined. There is always opportunity and room for growth. Always. In so many different areas. Financially, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically, intimately, right? So we're talking about relationships. We're talking about everything, right? If you lack motivation, right, this is how you gain perspective, and this is how you get it back. This is how you maintain it. This is how. I want to hear from everyone after trying some of these things, writing these things down. I want you to chime in the comments. I want you to tell me, what have you been lacking motivation on? What is it that you've been meaning to get started with? What have you been meaning to pick back up? Right? Write your list, life plan, short-term goals, long-term outcome. Who, what, why am I doing this? Right? That's how you get there to the long-term outcome. Make short-term goals that are attainable, measurable, objective, specific, attainable, right? Attainable. I'll say that again because they have to be attainable to track the progress. I want to hear from everybody on these goals and the progress that you've been making. If there's something maybe that you picked back up recently, so it doesn't even have to be something that you haven't done or you've been meaning to do. It could be something that you've actually gotten the motivation to start back doing. Right? I want to hear about that. Let me hear your progress. Motivate yourself through speaking about it. I really, really enjoyed this conversation. This is something that I really, really have a lot of passion for as well, in terms of just motivating others, speaking in terms of this, and truthfully, just coaching people to get to a better place in life, on all of those fronts that I mentioned before, on a mental, spiritual, emotional, physical level. So continue, progress, push, challenge. It's important. Continue to grow. I know that each and every one of you can, because you are capable of doing so. Big, big component, capability. Erase the negative self-talk. Push positive self-talk. Push growth, challenging. Increase your circle and value, not size. Remove those things that are tearing you down. Don't get in your own way. And know when it's not even worth doing that. Know when it's worth continuing to push forward. Run it over. Don't allow it to stop you. Don't allow it to make you lose focus, right? Shift your perspective, shift your vision. Keep your focus aligned with your purpose. I believe that each and every one of you can do it. I believe that each and every one of you will do it. If methods that I mentioned tonight are applied, everybody is capable. Take this, apply it, and let's hear the progress. Follow the YouTube. Make sure that you comment, like, subscribe, hit that notifications bell so that you know when I go live. If you're not following the Instagram, make sure that you drop over to the Instagram page. Like, follow, comment, chime in, give me topics. What do you want to talk about? YouTube, go follow the Instagram, go follow YouTube. And the link is in the bio for the YouTube on the Instagram page. I appreciate each and every one of y'all. Y'all have a good night, and I will catch y'all later. I'm about to get some rest because I got a lot of work to do tomorrow. Got big, big things on the up and coming. So I look forward to sharing a lot more with y'all, and I'll be tuning in as soon as I can. All right. Y'all have a good night. Love y'all. Peace out.